In the world of social media, few figures are as polarizing as enigmatic and as controversial as Andrew and Tristan Tate. From luxury cars and ostentatious displays of wealth to aggressive, hypermasculine ideologies that have amassed them a cult-like following, the brothers have rarely been out of the spotlight. But behind the bravado, the Instagram flexes, and viral podcast clips, a darker narrative has been taking shape. One that doesn't revolve around motivational speeches or millionaire mindsets, but around courtrooms, legal documents, and chilling allegations of exploitation. This is not another video glamorizing the Tate brothers' rise to fame. This is not a montage of Bugattis and cigars. This is a deep, meticulous look into the United Kingdom charges of rape and human trafficking brought against Andrew and Tristan Tate. Charges that have shattered the carefully curated image they broadcast to the world. This story begins not in a Romanian court, not in a Romanian jail cell, and not on the streets of Bucharest, but in the United Kingdom years earlier. Long before Romanian authorities knocked on their door with arrest warrants, long before the international media frenzy, there were already whispers. Whispers that began to evolve into formal investigations, testimonies, and eventually criminal charges. The public first came to know Andrew Tate as a former kickboxer. He marketed himself as a self-made man, an outspoken critic of what he describes as woke culture, and someone who believed in traditional gender roles with an iron fist. His younger brother, Tristan, was never far from his side, often echoing similar sentiments and appearing in the same bombastic media content that dominated YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Twitter. They branded themselves as alpha males in an emasculated world. But the allegations made against them paint a far different picture. Not of strength or leadership, but coercion, manipulation, and systematic abuse. According to court documents and statements released by UK law enforcement, both brothers are now officially charged with rape, human trafficking, and inciting others to engage in sexual activity without consent. These aren't vague claims. These are official, documented charges that could carry severe legal consequences if proven. The charges relate to events that allegedly took place between 2012 and 2015, years before the Tate brothers became household names on the internet. At that time, they were already experimenting with online businesses and were reportedly involved in webcam modeling ventures, a detail that now appears to be more than a footnote in their biographies. It may be central to the case itself. Authorities allege that the brothers used manipulation and psychological tactics to coerce women into performing sexual acts on camera. The UK Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed that multiple alleged victims came forward to report that they were groomed, deceived, and ultimately exploited. To understand the gravity of these charges, we must first understand the alleged methods, the way in which young women were reportedly approached, groomed, and brought into a system where consent was blurred and power dynamics were heavily skewed. According to testimonies obtained by investigators, some victims alleged that they were initially contacted under the guise of romantic interest, a tactic that's not uncommon in human trafficking cases and is often referred to as a lover-boy method. It's subtle, it's manipulative, and it's designed to break down barriers without immediate force. One moment, you're being told you're loved. The next, you're being asked to perform explicit acts in front of a webcam for profit. Some of the women reportedly involved in the case have described being isolated from their families, having their earnings controlled, and being psychologically conditioned to believe they had no other options. Whether through fear, guilt, or emotional dependence, these women claimed they were trapped not by physical chains, but by psychological ones. It is worth noting that the Tate brothers have publicly and vehemently denied all allegations against them, both in the UK and in Romania. They claim that they're the victims of a global matrix conspiracy orchestrated by governments and media entities who want to silence powerful male voices. They argue that the charges are politically motivated and that the legal system is being weaponized against them. But beyond the theatrics of online declarations and conspiracy theories, the legal process in the UK has taken a sober and methodical tone. These are not baseless tabloid rumors. They are part of formal prosecution by the Crown, one of the oldest and most respected legal systems in the world. In fact, the decision to prosecute was not made lightly. The Crown Prosecution Service only proceeds with a criminal case when there is enough evidence for a realistic prospect of conviction, and when it is deemed to be in the public interest. That threshold was evidently met, and as a result, Andrew and Tristan Tate, are now scheduled to face justice in a UK court. But this isn't just a legal matter. It's a cultural reckoning. For years, the Tate brothers have cultivated an empire on the internet, drawing millions of mostly young, male followers with promises of financial freedom, alpha dominance, and rejection of modern feminism. But if these charges are proven true, it calls into question the very foundation of their brand. It forces a reconsideration of what so many people have been idolizing. What have we really been watching? What ideology have millions bought into? The victims, whose identities remain protected, are not just footnotes in this saga. They are the center of it, and their voices, quieted for so long, are now beginning to echo in courtrooms, on legal documents, and in media outlets across the world. As the proceedings unfold, the world will be watching, not for the next viral clip, not for the next podcast rant, but for justice. And justice, in this case, could mean long prison sentences, reputational collapse, and an end to one of the internet's most divisive chapters. Stay with us as we continue to uncover the layers of this complex and unsettling case. This is only the beginning. Because behind every accusation, behind every court date and press release, are real people, real pain, real consequences. To truly understand the magnitude of what the UK legal system is preparing to prosecute, we need to explore not just the accusations, but the power structures behind them. Structures that allowed Andrew and Tristan Tate to operate in plain sight for years without serious scrutiny. The alleged victims in this case are not anonymous because they lack credibility. They are anonymous because they need protection, not only from a media machine that thrives on outrage, but from an army of online supporters who see the Tate brothers as infallible. This digital army has become one of the most formidable shields the brothers wield, not in a courtroom, but online, where public perception can be weaponized like a knife. In several victim accounts, women describe being subjected to relentless pressure, not necessarily with overt threats, but through gradual psychological manipulation. Some were allegedly told that if they didn't perform on camera, they would be left with nothing, no money, no place to stay, no one to turn to. One woman reportedly stated that what began as a consensual relationship quickly evolved into a coercive environment, where refusal wasn't just frowned upon, it came with consequences. Control, that's the key word here. Control over finances, control over social lives, control over movement, and most disturbingly, control over the very idea of consent. While Andrew Tate often refers to himself as a free speech absolutist and a champion of traditional values, these charges suggest a much darker application of those values, one where power is not earned through respect, but enforced through fear. The UK charges are not merely administrative hurdles. They are a direct indictment of the alleged systems of coercion that the brothers built long before their Romanian troubles began. It's important to consider that these charges come in parallel with the Romanian investigation, which itself includes accusations of rape, human trafficking, and the formation of a criminal gang. But what makes the UK case especially significant is the timeline. These incidents are alleged to have occurred more than a decade ago. If proven, they show a long-term pattern of behavior that predates their recent legal issues by many years. This also raises uncomfortable questions for law enforcement and society alike. How did this go unnoticed for so long? Were there warning signs that were ignored? And did the Tate brothers' rising fame insulate them from earlier accountability? Victim after victim reportedly approached UK authorities with eerily similar stories. Many describe being groomed into relationships that quickly turned transactional. Some claim they were told what to wear, how to act, what to say, all under the promise of a better life. But that promise, they allege, quickly dissolved into exploitation, gaslighting, and emotional imprisonment. These aren't simple misunderstandings or cases of post-relationship resentment. These are structured patterns of behavior, often involving multiple women, financial control mechanisms, and calculated efforts to isolate and dominate. Some of the most damning allegations come from former associates and insiders who have since distanced themselves from the Tate empire. One former employee claimed that Andrew Tate openly discussed how easily women could be manipulated if you love-bombed them and offered them a glimpse of luxury and romance. Another reportedly described how scripts were given to women who worked on cam sites, instructing them on how to present their persona in a way that maximized profit, often in degrading and abusive ways. Now, in a court of law, these statements will face rigorous cross-examination. The defense will argue credibility, intent, and consent, and that is their right. But as the legal process unfolds, more testimonies are expected to surface, and each one adds another piece to a disturbing puzzle, a puzzle that may ultimately dismantle the Tate mythos entirely. The cultural impact of this trial cannot be overstated. For years, Andrew and Tristan Tate have positioned themselves as paragons of a new masculinity, one that eschews vulnerability in favor of dominance, one that rejects equality in favor of hierarchy. But what if that ideology was never just theory? What if it was a scaffolding of a system that preyed on women while monetizing their submission? This is the core of what the UK case seeks to uncover. If the prosecution succeeds, it won't just be a legal victory. It will be a cultural reckoning. A message to influencers and online celebrities that wealth, charisma, and followers are not a shield from accountability. A reminder that behind the pixels and the platforms are real lives and real damage. Meanwhile, Andrew and Tristan continue to maintain their innocence. They've taken to social media to portray themselves as martyrs in a war against free speech, masculinity, and independent thought. They claim the system is afraid of them. But if the allegations are proven in court, it won't be because the system feared them. It will be because the system finally heard the voices of those who were silenced for far too long. This case is ongoing. Details are still emerging. But as more evidence comes to light, the world will have to make a decision, not about the guilt or innocence of the Tate brothers. That will be for a court to decide. But about the culture we've created that allows people to rise to power through manipulation, exploitation, and unchecked charisma. Stay with us as we continue to examine the facts, the testimonies, and the broader implications of a case that could reshape the way we think about online influence, masculinity, and justice. There's something deeply unsettling about the evolution of the Tate brothers' public personas. What started as a brash, over-the-top act for virality, filled with bombastic statements and inflammatory rhetoric, gradually became a belief system adopted by millions. For many of their followers, especially disillusioned young men, Andrew and Tristan weren't just entertainers. They were role models, mentors, leaders in a world they claimed was failing them. But the truth, as laid bare by the allegations in the United Kingdom, demands a far more sobering analysis. What does it mean when someone who markets themselves as a teacher of strength, control, and dominance is accused of using those very ideals to exploit others? What does it say about an online empire when its foundations might not be self-discipline and ambition, but coercion, psychological abuse, and power imbalances? The charges against Andrew and Tristan Tate aren't rooted in misunderstandings. They are built on years of investigations, witness testimonies, and corroborating evidence that point to a calculated pattern of behavior. Several women involved in the UK case reportedly say they were first approached with charm, with romance, with promises. This is not uncommon in trafficking cases. The lover-boy method, which authorities believe was used here, is not about force. It's about manipulation. It's about building emotional dependence before that trust is exploited. One woman, under strict anonymity, told investigators that she was swept into a whirlwind romance with Andrew Tate, a man who made her feel seen, heard, and protected. But very quickly, that protection became surveillance. That romance became obligation. And soon, she said, she found herself performing on webcam platforms under his direction, with little say in how the content was created or who profited from it. In her words, "I didn't realize I had become a product until it was too late." That's the heart of this case. Consent that begins willingly but is gradually eroded. It's not about a single moment of force. It's about a series of manipulations that turn a relationship into a transaction, and then into control. The prosecution's case will aim to show that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a blueprint. That Andrew and Tristan Tate understood how to identify vulnerable women, how to manipulate them into a false sense of security, and how to monetize their exploitation while maintaining an image of legitimacy. There are bank records, chat logs, audio recordings, all reportedly gathered by UK investigators as part of a years-long probe into brothers' early ventures. Evidence that the Crown Prosecution Service believes is sufficient to pursue charges of rape, human trafficking, and inciting non-consensual sexual activity. And yet, For many of the Tate brothers' fans, none of this seems to matter. Their loyalty runs deep, often veering into the territory of cult-like devotion. Any criticism is labeled an attack. Any legal charge is framed as political persecution. But here's the hard truth. Belief does not erase evidence. Loyalty does not override the law. Andrew Tate has gone on record saying that the system fears powerful men, that the charges against him are part of a larger attempt to silence independent thought and masculine pride. But prosecutors don't operate in the world of viral tweets or TikTok sound bites. They operate on facts, evidence, and legal standards. What makes this case so important is not just the high-profile nature of the accused, but what it reveals about the power of narrative, about how easy it is to hide exploitation behind luxury, about how charisma and charm can distract from manipulation and abuse. For years, the Tate brothers have framed their critics as weak, jealous, or misguided. But when your critics become courts of law, prosecutors, and victims with corroborating stories, the defense has to be more than deflection. The UK court system is built on due process. The brothers will have a chance to present their side, to cross-examine witnesses, to argue against the evidence. And that is how it should be. But the presence of legal defense does not mean the absence of wrongdoing. It simply means the truth must be determined publicly and under the weight of judicial scrutiny. What's at stake here is more than a potential prison sentence. What's at stake is the credibility of a generation of online followers who've built their identities around the Tate brothers' philosophies. What happens when your hero is on trial for crimes that contradict everything he claimed to stand for? Some have already begun to distance themselves, quietly unfollowing, quietly deleting videos. But others have doubled down, attacking the alleged victims online, accusing them of lying or being part of a grand conspiracy. And this, too, is part of the legacy the Tate brothers have created. A following so loyal that it lashes out blindly, unable to reconcile the person they worship with the crimes he's accused of committing. This is why this trial matters. It's about justice, yes, but it's also about accountability. It's about whether influence can shield someone from the consequences of their actions. It's about whether the digital age has created a new kind of untouchable, one whose followers will excuse anything, so long as the brand remains intact. But the law does not recognize brands. The law does not care about viral reach. It cares about facts, victims, and justice. As the UK trial moves forward, the world will watch not only to see if Andrew and Tristan Tate are found guilty or innocent, but to see whether our culture is finally ready to confront the dangers of unchecked online influence. Whether we're ready to listen to victims, even when the accused are powerful. And whether we're ready to stop excusing abuse just because it wears designer suits and speaks with confidence. The coming months will reveal much about the brothers, about their accusers, and about us, the audience who made them famous in the first place. While the legal system prepares its arguments and the prosecution builds its case, a different kind of war is unfolding online. A war of narratives, perceptions, and loyalties. It's no longer just about what happened behind closed doors years ago in the UK. It's also about how those stories are being received now, in the age of virality, where facts are often drowned out by algorithms and outrage. The Tate brothers' influence didn't just grow through controversy. It thrived on it. Their fan base was forged not in admiration of modesty or honor, but in rebellion. Rebellion against feminism. Rebellion against societal norms. Rebellion against accountability. Every scandal, every suspension from social media, every condemnation in mainstream media only seemed to strengthen their followers' loyalty. The more they were banned, the more powerful they became, or so the illusion was sold. But scandals like these, criminal charges with legal documentation, victim testimony, and tangible evidence, are different. They aren't just another soundbite to use in an edgy podcast clip. These are allegations that can't be walked back with a tweet or undone with a flashy YouTube response video. At the core of this legal storm are the women who decided they could no longer stay silent. Women who say they were promised security, love, and partnership, but were given exploitation, pressure, and emotional isolation. In multiple testimonies, victims described eerily similar experiences. Being flown to the UK under the assumption of building a life with one of the brothers, only to be met with a very different reality. A life where personal choices were dictated, where boundaries were ignored, and where the only priority was the revenue being generated on a webcam. What these allegations expose is not just a crime, but a structure, a business model that allegedly relied on manipulating vulnerable individuals emotionally and financially, and then positioning their pain as part of a profitable machine. The UK prosecutors will present these stories not as isolated complaints, but as part of a consistent pattern. Patterns are what give weight to cases like these. A single accusation can be dismissed, but multiple accusations, all sharing common traits, timelines, and techniques, that's what turns suspicion into prosecution. Yet, even as these women risk public scrutiny, the Tate brothers continue to frame themselves as the true victims. Victims of cancel culture, victims of feminism, victims of a world that punishes strong men. But the justice system doesn't care if you have abs and a microphone. It cares about truth. And in court, truth isn't determined by how many followers you have. It's determined by evidence. Some of the most disturbing evidence in this case reportedly comes from encrypted chat logs and voice notes. Authorities have recovered audio in which commands were given, allegedly detailing how women should behave, how they should speak on camera, and how they should handle objections from viewers. If authenticated, these recordings could provide damning proof of calculated intent. Proof that the Tate brothers weren't just careless or immature, but strategic and deliberate in their alleged exploitation. And this changes the conversation entirely. Because if these allegations are true, then the Tate brand is not just misguided, it's predatory. It's not a misguided ideology of masculine excellence. It's a polished mask worn over systemic abuse, a distraction from the real business of control, manipulation, and exploitation. The prosecution will likely argue that the success of the Tate brothers' online empire wasn't despite this behavior. It was built on top of it, that the money, the fame, the persona, and the influence were all made possible by an underground operation of abuse masquerading as entrepreneurship. And yet, some will continue to deny. They'll say the victims are lying, that they're bitter, that they were willing participants. But that's not how coercion works. That's not how grooming works. And it's certainly not how justice works. Willingness that's manipulated through lies is not consent. Relationships built on power imbalances are not equal. And business models that rely on silencing dissent are not legitimate. The real question this case forces us to confront is this: how did it take so long? How did a system, any system, allow this to go unchecked for years? How did we let internet fame become a suit of armor that deflected real accountability? In many ways, this is not just a trial of Andrew and Tristan Tate. It's a trial of the world that helped create them. The culture that glorified dominance over empathy, that mistook arrogance for strength, that cheered as young men were taught that control and aggression were the only real values of manhood. If these charges lead convictions, it will be a moment of reckoning, not just for the accused, but for everyone who propped them up, for every platform that paid them, for every fan who repeated their rhetoric without question, and for every algorithm that prioritized outrage over responsibility. But justice doesn't care about how big your platform is. It doesn't care about flash, followers, or fame. It only cares about facts. And those facts are being brought to court piece by piece. Whether Andrew and Tristan Tate are found guilty or not, this case already has consequences. Survivors who stayed silent are speaking. Systems that were too slow are waking up. And the public, at least some of them, are finally asking questions they should have asked years ago. The truth has never needed an influencer. It just needs a chance to be heard. Like my video and subscribe to my channel, No Justice Nation, for more daily videos on the truth behind today's most shocking crimes.